In this video, I'm going to work one of the VaR examples, except this is a VaR example you did not get in your class handouts. This is actually the quiz I gave to the EMBA Finance in 2012. So it's an extra practice problem, at least for the EMBA in 2013. It may be in the practice handouts for future classes. In this example, we've got this company that we need to calculate the value at risk for them. And the information we have is the portfolio we're looking at is $1.2 billion. It has a risk budget of $75 million. They have a risk tolerance of 0.3%, and the portfolio has a daily standard deviation of 2.4%, and pretty common for daily analysis, the expected daily return is close to zero, so we'll just say 0%. Here's the normal table. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how many standard deviations a risk tolerance 0.3% represents. And so when we're doing that, what we're looking for is 1 minus the risk tolerance, but convert it from percents into a decimal. And so that will equal 1 minus 0.003 or 0.997. So a 0.3% risk tolerance is the same thing as a 99.7% risk tolerance, the way this table is constructed. And so in that case, we go to the table and we're looking for the closest thing to 0.997. And you'll see in this particular case that that number is right here. There actually is 0.997 in the table, and when we do that, we can see that that equates to, we go over to the column, that equates to 2.7. I mean, go over to the row is the 2.7 row. We go up the column, and that's 0.05. So the number of standard deviations that equates to a 0.3% risk tolerance is 2.75. Just add the row and the column, 2.75. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the VaR. If you look at the analysis when we draw the normal curve, we have a mean of 0%, and we're looking for something that's to the left of the mean, but we're looking for something that above this number happens 99.7% of the time, and below this number that happens 0.3% of the time. And this number, the formula that you need is this number will be the VaR of 0.3%. will equal the mean minus the number of standard deviations times the standard deviation. So in our case it equals 0 minus, and we just calculated to 2.75 times the standard deviation. You can see that the standard deviation here that was given is 2.4%. So 2.75 times 0.024, very, very critical. Convert all percentages into decimals. And when you do that, you should get negative 0.066. So the VaR at 0.3% risk tolerance equals 6.6%. Remember, we don't use the minus sign. VaR is just assumed to be a loss because by definition it's how much we can lose at a 0.3% risk tolerance. Now that's the VaR in percent, but you notice that their budget, their risk budget is given in dollars. So we need to convert this percent into dollars. So 0.066 times the portfolio. In this case the portfolio is 1.2 billion. So 0.066 times 1.2 billion, I'm going to write it as 1,200, so put it in millions. 0.066 times 1.2 billion equals $79.2 million. So how did they do? Well, if you go back to the problem, you'll notice that their risk budget was $75 million. So they're allowed to lose up to $75 million, 0.3% at a time. However, they're expected to lose $79.2 million, 0.3% at a time. So they are over budget. So what can they do here? Well, first, you fired a trader. If you remember article number 2 on subjective value at risk, fire the trader. The trader was given a budget of $75 million, but she actually had risk equating to $79.2 million, so she exceeded her budget. The second thing you need to do is you need to reduce the risk of the portfolio. It is too high, so you do that by changing the allocation of portfolio, finding lower risk assets or a different combination of assets to reduce that risk. They could increase the risk budget. That's usually not a good thing to do if you want to have discipline in the process, but it's possible to increase the risk budget. So if for some reason they may have excess risk budget somewhere else in the firm, they're not using all of their risk budget, and this department is doing really, really well, maybe before you fire the trader, you say, okay, we're going to let you exceed it because the opportunities are great, but you would want to work that out in advance. So that's the answer. The VaR for the firm in dollars was $79.2 million. In percents, it was 6.6%. You compare the VaR at 0.3%, which is $79.2 million. Compare that versus the budget, the risk budget of $75 million. If they exceed, these are the three things that you do. If they had not exceeded, then what they could do, obviously the trader wouldn't be fired. What they could do is they could do nothing because they're within budget, or they could take more risk in the portfolio, or they could actually, if they wanted to reduce their risk tolerance even more. But the more likely thing is for them to do nothing. If they're within budget, they're not within budget in this problem. If they were, they could do nothing, don't fire anybody, do nothing, or they could actually take on more risk in the portfolio. That ends this video.